Smoke. Rotor blades cut through the thick jungle air. A frantic voice crackled over the radio. "We're taking fire! We need extraction now!" Below, wounded soldiers rushed toward a tiny clearing, no larger than a basketball court. Trees exploded into splinters as bullets tore through the leaves. The helicopter hovered only a few feet above the ground. There wasn't enough room to land. One soldier jumped. Another was pulled aboard by his vest. A medic refused to leave until the last casualty was inside. Then the helicopter lifted into a wall of smoke, disappearing before the enemy could close in. Hours later, dozens of lives had been saved. But hundreds of similar helicopters would never return. Their wrecks would scatter across Vietnam's rivers and jungles, becoming silent monuments to one of history's most dangerous missions. Yet this machine was never supposed to exist. Long before Vietnam became America's longest war, military planners faced a problem that no amount of courage could solve. The year was 1950. The Korean War had exposed a painful reality. Moving soldiers across rugged terrain was painfully slow. Trucks became trapped. Roads disappeared into mud. Casualties often waited hours or days for evacuation. Many who survived the battle died simply because help arrived too late. At the same time, the Cold War was growing colder. Washington feared future wars would erupt anywhere on Earth with little warning. American forces needed speed, unlike anything armies had possessed before. The answer wasn't a faster truck. It wasn't a larger aircraft. It was something that could land almost anywhere. Bell Aircraft, based in Texas, had already experimented with helicopters, but they remained fragile machines with limited uselessness. Most military commanders still considered them niche aircraft rather than battlefield necessities. One engineer believed that opinion was about to change forever. But convincing everyone would prove far harder than building the helicopter itself. Arthur Young wasn't a military officer. He wasn't even driven primarily by war. He was fascinated by flight itself. Working with Bell engineers throughout the late 1940s and early 1950s, Young helped refine rotor systems that made helicopters dramatically more stable than earlier designs. Bell's engineering teams transformed these ideas into practical aircraft, eventually developing the Bell Model 204. The U.S. Army designated it the UH-1. Its nickname came from its original designation, HU-1. Soldiers simply pronounced the letters. Huey. Simple. Easy. Impossible to forget. Yet the first prototypes weren't perfect. Engines overheated. Transmission components failed. Rotor vibrations shook entire airframes. Some officers questioned whether helicopters belonged anywhere near an active battlefield. Then everything changed. In 1959, Bell installed a Lycoming T-53 turboshaft engine, powerful enough to transform the helicopter's performance. The difference was dramatic. The Huey became faster, stronger, and more reliable. Most importantly, it could carry an entire squad of soldiers instead of just a handful of passengers. Military planners suddenly saw something revolutionary. The helicopter wasn't merely transportation anymore. It could reshape warfare itself. Budgets increased, production accelerated, factories worked around the clock. Thousands of workers assembled airframes while Cold War tensions pushed demand even higher. Nobody realized just how soon the Huey would face its greatest test. Vietnam. Invisible enemies. Roads that often existed only on military maps. When large numbers of American troops arrived during the mid-1960s, traditional mobility collapsed almost immediately. The Huey filled that gap. Its distinctive rotor sound echoed across valleys before soldiers could even see it. Entire infantry units were lifted directly into combat zones. Minutes later, those same helicopters returned carrying wounded men instead of fresh troops. The aircraft became an ambulance, taxi, gunship, command center, supply truck, and rescue vehicle, sometimes all in one day. Pilots often flew 6, 8, even 10 missions before sunset. Every landing zone carried uncertainty. Every tree line could hide enemy machine guns, yet they kept flying. But nobody expected what happened next. On November 14, 1965, American forces entered the Ia Drang Valley. The battle would become one of Vietnam's defining moments. Hueys poured soldiers into landing zone X-ray while artillery thundered in the distance. Almost immediately, fierce fighting erupted. Pilots landed under relentless fire. Some helicopters departed riddled with bullet holes. Others never left. One pilot later admitted he stopped counting incoming rounds because it no longer mattered. Only the next landing mattered. Only the next rescue. The Huey proved something military planners had only imagined. Air mobility could move entire battalions faster than enemies could react. The battlefield itself had changed. Yet victory came with an enormous cost. Hundreds of Hueys would eventually be destroyed during the war. Still, replacements kept arriving. History had entered the helicopter age. Few people realized that the Huey almost became something very different. Early versions lacked significant armor. Engineers constantly struggled to balance protection against weight. Every additional steel plate reduced lifting power. Every extra weapon reduced passenger capacity. The solution created specialized variants. Some Hueys carried machine guns, others mounted rocket pods. Medical evacuation helicopters remained lightly armed to maximize speed, while heavily armed gunship versions escorted troop transports into hostile landing zones. Even more surprising was what followed. Experience with armed Hueys directly inspired a purpose-built attack helicopter, the UH-1 Cobra. Its sleek profile and concentrated firepower solved problems that improvised gunship Hueys never fully could. History almost forgot that connection. Without the Huey's limitations, the Cobra might never have existed. By the early 1970s, technology had begun moving forward again. Military missions demanded heavier payloads, longer range, and greater survivability. Twin-engine helicopters reduced the danger of losing power after enemy fire. Aircraft like the UH-60 Black Hawk gradually replaced the Huey in frontline American service during the following decades. Politics also played a role. Vietnam had become deeply unpopular. Many machines associated with the conflict quietly disappeared from headlines as the military looked toward a different future. Yet the Huey refused to vanish completely. Thousands continued serving around the world. Some flew humanitarian missions, others fought wildfires. Many entered civilian rescue organizations. The machine built for war found a new purpose, saving lives. That's when everything changed once again. Today, the unmistakable wop 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 of a Huey's rotor still stops people in their tracks. For veterans, it's more than a sound. It's a memory, sometimes of survival, sometimes of loss. Museums preserve beautifully restored examples, but their faded paint cannot fully capture what those helicopters endured. More than 16,000 Hueys were built, making them one of history's most recognizable military helicopters. Their influence reaches into nearly every modern battlefield helicopter flying today. Rapid air assault, medical evacuation, helicopter-borne infantry, combat search and rescue. These ideas became military doctrine because the Huey proved they could work under the harshest conditions imaginable. The helicopter slowly disappeared from America's front lines. Its missions evolved. Its successors grew faster and more advanced.
But every time a military helicopter descends into danger to rescue the wounded, deliver troops, or bring hope where roads cannot reach, the shadow of the Huey descends with it.
And somewhere beyond the sound of the blades, history is still listening.